Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Gyanamurtim Dvandvaititam Gaganasadrisham Tattvamasya Dilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Bhavati Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Triguna Rahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami Shanti Shanti Shanti. We salute the leader of our souls, through whose grace our ignorance is dispelled, who is beyond good and bad, life and death, pleasure and pain, and all other pairs of opposites. We recognize that one as the only witness to the changing phenomena of this universe. May we, through that grace, go beyond darkness and delusion and realize the truth in this very life. Peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all living beings. Hari Om Tat Sat. So last week when we were, not last week, but the last time that we were together, we were looking at the Narada's 8 aids for devotion and the 9 limbs of bhakti, according to Sri Ram. And since we are so focused right now on the devotional path, I wanted to also open this class with a reading. Today I was reading in God Lived With Them about the 16 direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, and I'm in the section currently on Swami Sharadananda. And at one point, Sri Ramakrishna sang a song from the Brahmo Samaj to him and told him, assimilate any one of these ideas and you will reach the goal. Now, apparently this is also in context of when Sri Ramakrishna asked Sharat, the young Swami Sharadananda, who he loved, what his ideal love was. And I think maybe it was in relative terms. And the young Sharat said, I don't think I love anyone. And Sri Ramakrishna scolded him for that. So Swami Chaitanananda, who's the author or the editor for this book, both author and editor, he explained that as if we love someone, then, and if we love humanity, if we love other beings, then we are able to take that love and more easily turn it towards God. So in part of the scolding that Sri Ramakrishna gave to Sharat was, what a dry rascal you are. You know, either land on one side or the other, but don't not be on either side. In other words, loving in the world or loving in God, you've got to choose one or the other, at least. So back to this opening, Sri Ramakrishna said, assimilate any one of these ideas and you will reach the goal. So here's the song. Thou art my all in all, O Lord, the life of my life, the essence of essence. In the 3 worlds, I have none else but thee to call my own. Thou art my peace, my joy, my hope. Thou my support, my wealth, my glory. Thou my wisdom and my strength. Thou art my home, my place of rest, my dearest friend, my next of kin. My present and my future, thou, my heaven and my salvation. Thou art my scriptures, my commandments. Thou art my ever gracious Guru. Thou the spring of my boundless bliss. Thou art the way and thou the goal. Thou the adorable one, O Lord. Thou art the mother tender-hearted. Thou the chastising father. Thou the creator and protector. and thou the helmsman who dost steer my craft across the sea of life. I'm fairly certain this appears in the gospel, but if anyone wants to have this, I'll text it to you. I'll email it to you. Just let me know. So where we left off, we had gone through 3 of the limbs of bhakti. And I don't know if I did this last time or if I'm just inspired by what Anurag did at class last week on the Gita. But it was in my notes that we would pair up the uh, the 8 devotional aids with the 9 limbs. So let me go ahead and share my screen here so that we can see them and also go through the limbs. I want you to be thinking about them, especially when we get to the 4th, because we're only going to do a little bit of review here. So remember, we had Shravanam, hearing of God's glories, and then Shmaranam, remembering God, Archanam, loving adoration of the Lord, Kirtanam, singing and dancing for the Lord. And that's where I showed that beautiful chart on Sri Ramakrishna's ecstasy, dancing in ecstasy in Kirtan. Then Vandanam, devout worship of the Lord, Sevanam, serving God and the devotees. On that note, we'll be getting to it again, but in the 9 limbs. But on that note, there's a passage again in that wonderful book on the 16 direct disciples where I believe it's Swami Premananda is talking about how it's not enough to love God and to serve God. One has to also serve the devotees, something to that extent, that the real devotee of God is the one who serves the devotees. Yeah, it was in that flavor. Then bhajanam, heartfelt devotion for God, and sharanam, surrendering to the Lord. So think about these as we move forward. So in the 9 limbs, and I gave background to that already, this appears in the Adhyatma Ramayana. We have association with the holy, and we went through great detail about the importance of that and the different points that you see here on the chart. And then spreading the teachings. And this is more along the lines of sharing anecdotes. Before we have the qualification or the blessing of our teacher to actually share the teachings, the Dharma teachings, here in the 2nd limb. This is more about the stories we've heard about great devotees and the divine incarnations and what our teacher said about it, in a teaching, something like that, and just as a sharing. And this comes up very well because this is one of the ways that we practice keeping God in mind and talking about God. And we want to do this with fellow devotees, of course. But it's extremely helpful, as Swami Vivekananda says, to keep our mind on God as much as possible, to always be thinking about God, to be doing all of our activities through the thought of God, and to talk with other devotees about God, or those who are open to hearing about God. So then there's singing God's glories, and we got a little bit into perceiving the divine origin of sound, chanting God's names and devotional singing, understanding and utilizing devotional moods. We're going to pick that up at the end of this teaching. and knowing the meaning of the chants and recitations. That's really important because we can just be parrots out there. Uh, One sees that happening in the popular kirtan concerts. But to really know what you're chanting, and if you're chanting the name of a divine incarnation, what do you know about that? And this goes together with that important motto that you love what you know, and then you know what you love. So these two things work together. So now let's move on to hearing an exposition of God's teachings. And this is, a shorthand for this is actually taking the teachings. So we may have been in holy company and listening to readings from the Bhagavatam or to the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna and other such things, listening to a satsang. But here, we're talking about the Dharma teachings, contemplating the teachings of the luminaries, implementing teachings into life. This is very important. And it's really important to have a teacher as we're starting to do that, because questions will arise, karmas may arise. And so this is really essential to make strong headway without detours. And then willingness and ability to spread the teachings. And we've already hinted at that as we mature in our implementing the teachings into life, we always, as soon as we get hands-on with anything, we learn from that. If we just keep it as a theory in the mind, then it's just intellectual, at the most bottom level, intellectual knowledge. But as soon as we start to apply that knowledge, then we begin to get direct experience of some kind. It might be, in the beginning, direct experience of what doesn't work. And maybe we heard it wrong, we didn't interpret it right, we heard it with a tamasic mind, or we heard it with a rajasic, distorting mind. And so we go back to our teacher and say, tell that again to me, and how's the best way for me to apply it? So, and that's, again, the importance of having a teacher and having private meetings or correspondence or phone calls with your teacher, is because, satsang is great, but the answers to some degree are going to be influenced by all the other minds in that meeting. And so it's important to have private meetings with the teacher to get a tailor-made response for one's own temperament and capacity. So as we mature in implementing these teachings into life, and we get confirmation and validation also from our teacher and from our own experience, then this willingness, this limb of bhakti is about having the willingness and the ability, which means also the approval of the teacher, to begin to spread the teachings. And unless the qualified ones of a sangha do this, it doesn't move forward into the next generation. Unless we're willing to do this in our families and with open-minded friends, it doesn't spread into the community. So this is extremely important, but we have to be qualified. As some of us here will know that story of Swami Asheshanandaji and Babaji about the lawnmower. And the upshot of it is that Swami Asheshananda said to Babaji, Vedanta is a precision instrument. You have to know how to use it. So this is essential. And the exact same thing is true of Tantra, of yoga, of Samkhya. So we want to study deeply and apply deeply. So the next one is devoted service to the teacher. And in that manuscript called The Nine Limbs of Bhakti According to Sri Ram, among the subheadings in that chapter on the devoted service to the teacher is understanding the significance of the spiritual teacher. There's so much to say about that, but perhaps most of us already know. Until somebody who already has the light comes into our life, the chances of us getting it on our own here in a land where we're not raised in the Dharma it's possible, but it's rare. So the significance of the teacher is extremely important. And also, again, that thing about guiding us. And the teacher can't guide us unless we go for guidance. So direct contact with the teacher is really important, not just participating in classes, but participating in classes is also essential. So then the next one is perceiving God in the Guru. There's also this truism that a lot of people, that along the way in spiritual life, it's through the teacher that we learn to see God in ourselves. And so when we begin to open up and perceive God in the Guru, then that helps us see God in ourselves. So again, understanding the significance of the spiritual teacher is also knowing that there's only one ultimate guru, Sat Chidananda, and it comes through all these different forms. It flows through all qualified teachers. And so that is another reason why we need to perceive God in the Guru, not get derailed as it's so easy for Westerners to do in projecting our own imperfections on the teacher, assuming that the way we think about things is the way the teacher is thinking about something, or the reason why we would do something, what would be the motivation behind it, is what the teacher's motivation is. We have to let go of that and open up. So then the next one, this is again very hard for Westerners, following the guru's advice and rendering service. So when the guru gives us spiritual instruction for our spiritual life, the more we can follow it exactly, the better for us. Now, the fact that I have said it that way means that a lot of people don't or feel that they can't. But eventually growing into the capacity for that is very important. It reminds me of something that's kind of related. There's a Western disciple named, oh shoot, what was her name? Marie Louise Burke. And I'm blanking out on her Sanskrit name. Anyway, she was a disciple of Swami Ashokananda, and she lived a fairly monastic life once she connected with him. And he gave her, of course, initiation and the practice of japa. And there were parts of her that really rebelled. like she rebelled about not eating out. The Swami wanted her to eat only sattvic food. In other words, food at the ashram or food that she herself prepared. And of course, he wanted her to do japa of the mantra. Well, she didn't understand how any of this worked. And there's even a very funny episode of where the Swami, they were going somewhere, and the Swami was behind her in another car. And she stopped and went to what was the closest thing to a fast food place back then in the 40s or so. And he caught her there and scolded her. Um, anyway, so she finally went to him and just told him the problems that she was having with this. She said, I don't understand how this works. And what he said to her was, you eat food, don't you? Do you know how food is digested? And of course, she had to admit that she didn't. And so he said, just like that, eat sattvic food, repeat the mantra. It will all get digested and the benefits will come. The nourishment will come, whether you know how it works or not. Now, we're actually quite, Sister Gargi, thank you. We're actually quite fortunate because Babaji spends a great deal of time instructing us on the meaning of the guru, the meaning, well, that too, but the meaning of the mantra and what the stages of practicing repetition of the mantra are, all of this. So maybe we're a little fortunate than Sister Gargi was. Okay, so I spent a lot of time on that. All right, and rendering service. We talked actually quite a bit about that in Sevanam back in the 8 devotional aids. So there's this beautiful, there are things that we get by transmission. In the West, we might call it osmosis, by being in the company of the teacher and performing personal service. And not just personal service, this is what they mean by rendering service, but also by serving the Guru's cause, the Guru's mission in life. And when we align ourselves with that, and here in SRV, that goes from Babaji to Swami Asheshananda, to Vivekananda, Holy Mother, and Sri Ramakrishna. We're in that mode and serving the mission through Babaji is helping SRV move forward in the mission, is another form of rendering service. So then the next one, developing good habits, purification of the mind through self-control, and performing devoted worship. So among the different sections in that chapter are knowledge and practice, knowledge of and practice of ethics, morality, and purification of the mind. And here we have that distinction between morals and ethics, which are essential, but purification of mind through spiritual practice, you don't get absolute purification of mind through ethics and morality. Those are just things we ought to have, right? To know right from wrong, to not do unto others what we would not have done unto us, and such, and the different ways that that's expressed. That's just basic things that we ought to be born with. But purification of mind through knowledge is is very important through the Dharma. So that's where we get the difference between ethics and morality and the Dharma, which will take us, if we practice sincerely and surrender, that will take us to the gateway of liberation. So then we have to moderate our sensual appetites and restrain our senses. These really two, almost the same thing. Participation and offering ceremonial worship. This is very purifying. And this is how we purify the body as well. And for those who perform ceremonial worship, even in one's personal shrine, that's a way of practicing concentration and motion. And we have the deity in front of us. We have the deity in our mind, in our heart. We're performing action. It's like we've got thought, word, and action all in one, in union. So when we practice ceremonial worship in that mode, that is yoga. That is the union of thought, word, and deed. So the benefit of learning even a little bit of ceremonial worship is extremely important. And then austerities to expand spiritual growth. So we've spent many other classes talking about these austerities. And we've talked about them in terms of austerity of the body, such as worship and pilgrimage and such things. Austerity of the speech, which is beneficial and pure, and leading to silence of mind. Silence is practicing verbal silence and mental silence is one of those austerities. But there are other such things. Let's say that we're feeling kind of low. We have kind of a low ebb of energy and inspiration in our life. Maybe we're even verging on kind of low-level depression or worse. We can take up an austerity and say, this is just an example, I'm going to read one chapter or half a chapter or 3 verses or so of the Bhagavad Gita every day for the next month. And hopefully you'll keep that up and see what that does to one's mind. And what about, I'm going to read at least 1 page of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna every day and see what that does to the mind. Questions arise, go to your teacher. But taking a vow that you're not going to break. I cannot go to sleep at night until I have done this. That kind of a vow is an austerity, and it will transform the mind. It's another way of saying, calling on sattva and bringing sattva to the fore in our life. Of course, there's going to be many other examples. Okay, the next one, repetition and contemplation of the mantra. And so the points here are the first one, receiving initiation from a spiritual teacher and receiving the mantra and understanding it and performing japa with it. And we've already actually talked a lot about that already, but I want to read the translation of a quote of a verse out of the Tantra Sadbhava. That it's one that we've been hearing in classes lately from Babaji. The English is this: mantra is that, the contemplation of which yields that special knowledge that the world is not separate from Brahman. Practice and recitation of the mantra renders this fact fully comprehensible. So let me read that again. mantra is that, the contemplation of which yields that special knowledge that the world is not separate from Brahman. Practice and recitation of the mantra renders this fact fully comprehensible. So again, you could say that Swami Ashokananda knows that she will just realize this, Sister Gargi, that is, if she keeps it up and she meditates on the meaning and on the ishtam and so forth. So then the chosen ideal and worshiping God with form. So that's the next part. So when we receive a mantra, it generally has an ishtam associated with it. So we need to know about the chosen ideal, dive deeply into the life of that being and all the different, if it's a divine incarnation, for instance, or all the stories associated with that, if it's a cosmic deity. We want to know all that we can, because then we have more to love, basically. And that forms our worship. Then our japa is the worship. We incorporate it in our ceremonial worship. We begin to see that in everything. Just like that song that I read the translation of at the beginning of class, all those different ways. Oh Lord, thou art my all in all. Thou art my strength, thou art my wealth, thou art my next of kin. Thou art the spring of my boundless bliss, and so forth. So, yes. So the next one, serving the devotees and cultivating non-attachment and seeing God in all. So basically, we can pull that one all together as practicing God's presence. And here I have some quotes from the disciples that I want to share with you. You must therefore, and this is from Swami Ramakrishnananda, you must therefore practice the presence of God inside you. You may say, I cannot see him. You know what? I realized that as I was going through these today, that I wanted to share, I wanted you all to be able to see these. Because sometimes when we read and hear, and it goes in deeper. So you must therefore practice the presence of God inside you. You may say, I cannot see him with these eyes of mine. I cannot hear him with these ears. How then am I to perceive him? You can never perceive him in this way. To go to the Creator, you must throw aside these instruments which take you directly to the creation. You must go beyond your mind and senses. Then meditation will come of itself. This is the only way to get inner vision. These senses are made for the creation, not for the Creator. And that is such a powerful way of stating what the Svetashvatara Upanishad says. I think it is. I think it's the Svetashvatara, that the senses are defective by nature because they are outgoing. So that sounds like the negative. That sounds very much like a negative. We get to all this eventually, but we have to start with understanding that if we want to have the realization of God, we have to let go of these senses. You cannot take them. You cannot take them there, because God is the substratum for all that. But when you reach that level, when you reach if you are to reach all pervasiveness, you have to let go of form, because form covers formlessness. And that's what all pervasive reality is pure formlessness, beyond form and formlessness. So this is a very very modern way to put it. These senses are made for the creation, not for the creator. So then Swami Vivekananda says, day and night, think of God. Okay, remember, we're talking about practicing the presence of God, serving the devotees, cultivating non-attachment, and seeing God in all in the 9 limbs of bhakti. Day and night, think of God, and as far as possible, think of nothing else. The daily necessary thoughts can all be thought through God. Eat to Him, drink to Him, sleep to Him, see Him in all. Talk of God to others. This is most beneficial. And he goes on somewhere else. When the whole soul pours in a continuous current to God, when there is no time to seek money or name or fame, no time to think of anything but God, then will come into your heart that infinite, wonderful bliss of love. All desires are but beads of glass. True love of God increases every moment and is ever new. It is to be known by feeling it. Love is the easiest of disciplines. It waits for no logic. It is natural. We need no demonstration, no proof. Reasoning is limiting something by our own minds. We throw a net and catch something, and then say that we have demonstrated it. But never, never can we catch God in a net. So the proof of love is the direct experience of it. The proof of God is the direct experience of that. Swami Brahmananda then says, it is through practice of the presence of God in the heart that we begin to feel the overwhelming love of God for us, and love for Him comes naturally. Isn't that beautiful? Practicing the presence of God in the heart brings to us the overwhelming love of God for us. So, yeah. Now the final one is investigation into the true nature of reality. So I read somewhere something that's going to make perfect sense to us, I'm sure. And this was by one of the direct disciples, I believe, that when we truly love God, when that kind of love and practice of the presence that we've just been hearing about uh, really develops in our life, then we want to know. We want to know it. It's like, again, we say this a lot, but it's always good to hear it when we're in a different mode or mood or in a different guna. That somebody once said to Swami Asheshananda, why would I want to be sugar? Why wouldn't I just want to taste sugar? And Swami's reply was, only those who have not tasted sugar think they do not want to be sugar. Once you have tasted it, you want to merge with it. So, and then I think Babaji in a recent class was talking about, or maybe it was in a God blog, that Sri Ramakrishna was talking about how he, through the will and grace of the Divine Mother, experienced all these different deities, one after another, over a period of time. And it was glorious, of course. And finally, he went to her and said, Mother, this is so wonderful. But in all of this, there is separation. is there not something without a way to realize God without separation? And I'm not sure when this occurred in his earthly life, but his life on earth, let's put it that way. But perhaps that was just before she brought Totapuri to him, who taught him the Advaita, and when he had Nirvikalpa. So the subheadings for this investigation into the true nature of reality is, first one, transcending the idea of relativity. This is really important. We remember, I mean, this is like an adage, truism for us, that form covers formlessness. This ultimate formlessness is absolute and indivisible and all pervading. So that there's the absolute and there's the relative. And form is all about relativity. So in order to get to the end of the road, so to speak, in investigating the true nature of reality, we have to let go of reality. It's like, again, these senses of ours. And here now we're going to talk about both the external senses and the internal senses. They both are for the creation, whether it's the gross creation or the heavenly creations, the subtle creations. And we have to let go of those, because whether it's gross form or subtle form or conceptual form, these all cover that absolute formlessness. So we have to begin entertaining this idea. The next one is concentration and meditation on reality. Now, this statement assumes that we have been able to focus the mind on the Ishtam or on subtle truth. Subtle truth is still not absolute truth. This is lower truth to higher truth that we're going. And so we have to be able to bring the mind to concentration. And in fact, in the actual table of contents for the Nine Limbs of Bhakti manuscript, Babaji has a paren here that's parentheses under the title, which is concentration, meditation, and realization. You know, that realization here must be synonymous with samadhi. So this is samyama that we're talking about. The investigation into the true nature of reality, speaking yogically, is being able to perform samyama. So concentration, meditation, and samadhi on the subtle principles until it all dissolves into realization of non-dual truth. Or here it says realization of the Atman. So we begin to practice this concentration and meditation on reality. And this may take years, it may take a lifetime, it may take many lifetimes. Along the way, we must overcome the fear of death, because that fear of death is going to hold us back in the realm of form. So then the last one is realization of the Atman. So we didn't do that little study here, but I'm going to pause here for a minute and just ask if there's any questions or thoughts. And if you don't have any, we're going to go do that little engagement practice of aligning the 8 devotional aids with the 9 limbs of bhakti. So let's take developing good habits. Where did I have that? Excuse me. Undergoing purifications. That's number 6. What would you put of these with the, because remember our poet here, he said, as love and gratitude bubbled up blissfully within me, I was made aware of the 9 limbs of bhakti, and thereafter was vouchsafed the practice of the 8 devotional aids to realize them. So how would you use these in order to develop good habits, purification of the mind through self-control, and so forth?
Well, if I may, I think I think of Shravanam. Just thinking, just because it's when you start to hear of God's glories, it's you start to you just get purified in the process. And like the study we're doing now, the direct disciples, you hear about them, you get a taste of their lives, the way they lived, that it's even possible to live a life like that. And yeah, so I think that's it's a great start, just to gain an awareness of those who have been able to live a life of purity. It gives you faith and confidence that you can do it yourself.
Great. Who else can select one of these and apply it?
I could. I think Archanon, loving adoration of the Lord. I think anything that's habitual in the if we're doing it for God and thinking of God, then that's an action of adoring God. Archanon.
Great. Anyone want to offer another one or choose a different limb? Don't be shy. It's good to work at making connections. This is part of applying the teachings. Okay, then what about this last one? Investigation into the true nature of reality. Which of these do you think that calls to mind?
Well, any one of these can certainly apply to that, but I'm thinking every time I look at one, I think, no, another one is just as good. I'd say bhajanam, heartfelt devotion for God. Yeah, it just leads one to dive deeper and deeper and deeper in both into every all the yogas, and you just you become a little bit like the peacock who's been given a pellet of opium. You just keep returning again and again, and there are different dimensions of devotion that just keep unfolding. So yeah, I would say bhajanam sticks out for me, even first amongst all of these glories. I would say that for now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Who else?
I'd agree with Anu on that, because heartfelt devotion, that's like a continual investigation, right? So if we're continuing to try to find God in everything, that's investigating. So I agree with Anu's observation of Varjanam path.
Thank you. Who else? Chaitanya, come on. Okay, for me, I was thinking, I mean, and I agree with you that you could probably pick all of these because they all lead you there. But the one I was thinking specifically of was Sharanam, surrendering to the Lord. And I see Akshaya, she's shaking her head. Yeah, Sharanam, because again, it's when you surrender everything. I mean, overcoming fear of death, um, surrendering to God instead of letting the senses go outward to everything else so that you can concentrate the mind, get into meditation, etc. You know, realizing the Atman at the highest level, uh, you know, not intuiting the Atman, but having direct realization of the Paramatman is, I mean, that's a sambragata. So you have to give up all form in order to experience that. So, yeah. All right. Any further comments? Then we are going to leave this and take a look at the upcoming verse. And I'm going to like introduce it rather quickly because we only have like 6 minutes left. But I think it's an idea that's useful for playing with. And it brings back an idea, a metaphor that Babaji had used to use, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago. So yeah, here's back to sharing the screen. And what we're going to look at first is just the verse. We're now entering into verse 24. While contemplating the 6 transformations of relative existence, my mind became temporarily irresolute. So I swiftly recalled the 7 steps to the attainment of Kaivalya and reached blessed transcendence. So there was a metaphor that Babaji used that was like calling everything here Prakriti's playground. And it's like, you know, for whatever reason, we all embodied here. And at some point, we decided to take embodiment. There's no beginning. It's just ongoing because ultimately we're only that one reality. But let's just take a look at this. So he talked about Prakriti's playground and the Jiva's playmates. And sometimes this would get paired up with the Ramprasad poem where, you know, I think Ramprasad is complaining, you sent me to this world and I'm now like a bumblebee buzzing around a tapestry, thinking that I'm going to get sweetness from the tapestry's flowers. What kind of world is this that you've sent me to? And then somewhere else he says, you know, she does this so playfully and she winks and smiles. It's like, you know, don't forget to remember where you're from. You wanted to come have some experience of separation. So here I've given you this realm of separation. So here's the quick rundown. We'll go through it a little more with more depth next time. But what I wanted to present here is the playground structures are basically the three gunas and the 24 cosmic principles and prana. I forgot to put prana in there. Those are the structures. That's our cosmic Maya. And then the playground has rules. And, we can't do without the structures and we can't do without the rules. And the rules are the 6 transformations: birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death. Everything that's in form undergoes these, especially biological forms go through every single one of these. Now, so this is what we call the cosmic Maya. The problem comes when we forget that we are Purusha and not nature, that we are Purusha and not Prakriti. These are just the playground. So this is Maya. Now, what we don't want to play with are the 6 passions, the 8 fetters, the 4 deadly traps, and there's so many others. These are what is called delusion. These are the next stage of delusion. So there's cosmic Maya, and then there's Mithya, individual Maya, individual delusion. So Mithya is delusion. And that's when we attach ourselves to physical form and to thinking that we have that this birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death belongs to us. And then that gives rise to lust, anger, greed, delusion, vanity, and jealousy, hatred, shame, lineage, pride of lineage, pride generally, fear, secrecy, pride of caste, grief. Here in the West, this might be our social and economic status. That's what we have for caste. And then the 4 deadly traps, by giving into all of these, we end up with guilt, grief, depression, and low self-esteem. So this is your assignment right now, is to make this division. These are the playground, and there's no good reason for us to, these represent pain, right? Birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death. Yes, the body will have pain, but suffering is what the mind does with it. And that's where we end up with lust, anger, greed, delusion, vanity, etc., all these others. So let's make this division. There's the cosmic Maya, and then there's the individual's mithya and ignorance. And let's play with that and see if we can be mature in our experience in the playground. And then once we go through all of that, we're going to take a look at the playground monitors, which are these 7 steps, 7 steps to Kaivalya. So just keeping with the metaphor, I called them the monitors. So, all right, let's close with the chant. Om Masatoma Sadgamoya, Tamasuma Jyotir Gamoya, Mrichorma Amritam Gamoya, Abhira Bhira Maedi, Rudrayate Dakshinamukam, Tenamam Pahinityam. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Lead us from lower truth to higher truth. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from the illusion of death to realization of eternal existence. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother of the universe, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all living beings. Om Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat.